Good afternoon, evening, morning, ladies and gentlemen, wherever it is in the world that you are, and welcome to the iFormula League Round 3 from Season 5 here for our F1 series at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, home to motorsport within the UK, a lot of people would say. I would tend to agree with them. It tends to be the mecca for all things motor racing, and of course, we do know the Silverstone circuit very well. It is iconic in a lot of ways. Almost could be considered the start of Formula 1 as a whole. And the track, certainly typical British conditions, being 18C ambient. And the weather, I mean, it's looking pretty miserable out there. The clouds have certainly come to play. Of course, no rain in iRacing, so we don't have to worry about that. But enough about that. I'm Alyssa as always, and let's get on track. Let's look at qualifying and see what's happening. I did try to go early enough to see the qualifying results in the first few laps. I believe Riley has just started on his first lap. We'll go on board with him and see whether or not he's actually going to try and set a time or whether or not he's just waiting. I believe may have actually messed that lap up a little bit. But welcome in, everybody, to the iFormula League, as always. Qualifying has only just started, so you have not missed any action at all. 2 minutes of the session gone so far, and nobody yet to set a lap time. Of course, we're looking for notable names, such as Riley Jacob, to try and maybe take pole position, as you would probably expect him to do. But everyone who's involved, everyone who is in the chat, give us your opinion. Who are you rooting for? Do you have a favourite team involved? There are only, I believe, 11 drivers today, so a little bit of a smaller grid than last time out in Catalonia, but hopefully the racing is still nice and close indeed, as Ben Goldthorpe. We're coming across the line shortly and setting the first benchmark time. And you would have to imagine for the Intend flat-out sim racing driver. I believe it's an Intend flat-out anyway. I could be wrong on that one. It's either Intend flat-out or Intend sim racing. I always forget the difference between the two of them. But Ben Goldthorpe does set the first representative lap time, 128.544, which I believe also was the fastest lap time in practice as well. So Riley on this track, and I'm a bit afraid. Well, it's a good thing you're not racing against him today, then. Riley, of course, has been incredibly quick, almost throughout the entire season, you would have to say, so far. I mean, he's been there basically every race, doing an incredibly good job in this car to win pretty often. Even in the sprint, where we do reverse the grid. I want to see if I can actually get up the previous race winners. Riley, of course, last week out, doing the double win. Pretty much dominating every session. Did Riley Jacob, the number 17 car. So Catalonia seemed to be his strong point. The Imola race, I was just trying to remember what the what the track was for our first round out. Obviously, I wasn't there to commentate. Unfortunately, I was ill. But yeah, Imola went his way in the Grand Prix, but in the sprint, Rowley actually came out with the win. So potentially, maybe Rowley can get in there and start fighting along with him. Øyvind Haugland, again, another driver who is pretty quick on his day. And, you know, things can happen, especially around Silverstone. You know, when we look at Silverstone, right, you think of all of the notable incidents that have happened at Silverstone in real-life F1. You think, potentially, you're looking at, you know, your Verstappen, Hamilton recently. You've got T1 incidents happening off the start with people trying to go too wide, maybe even 3 wide into the first corner, and just, unfortunately, people don't get good starts, or, you know, things happen, and who knows? who knows? Hamilton's finished with 3 tires as well, yeah. Another notable example of some of the most impressive drives that we've seen typically come from Silverstone. Silverstone is a circuit that I think over the years has definitely changed quite a bit. I don't think you can say it's necessarily a boring circuit these days. I definitely think people are starting to understand Silverstone a little bit more as a racetrack and are really starting to try and almost take Silverstone to its absolute limits. And Silverstone is a track that has bitten back quite often. And of course, Øyvind Haugland and Riley Jacob are obviously racing for the same team, so if Riley does well around here, he said last week actually that he wasn't necessarily the quickest around Silverstone, and he was maybe trying to get a few hints from Øyvind, his teammate, and seeing whether or not anything can happen and who's going to take the win. Øyvind was joking around saying that last week he's lulling Riley into a false sense of security so that he can take the win and the championship for himself later on in the season. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that one. At the moment, neither of them having set an actual representative lap time yet, but Ben Goldthorpe currently still the fastest man on track at the moment with a 1:28.424, followed off by Gianluca Iliano, who I believe races for the same team. I could be wrong about that one. Or rather, they race in the same team, but they are sister teams, if that makes sense. A bit like how you've got Red Bull and AlphaTauri. So you've got Gianluca, who is racing for Inten flat out, and then Ben Goldthorpe, who's racing for the main Inten team, I would have to imagine. Alex again without a teammate. Yeah, it is a shame to see no Lumos guys out there. You know what? I was going to say, let's go on board with Riley Jacob, but he's just absolutely smashed it on the first lap, and, wow. A 1:28.0 is definitely one of the faster lap times that you're going to see around here. That is... yeah, that is fast. That is indeed fast. Øyvind Haugland up in Sector 4, purple through Sector 4 even. A little bit of traffic to contend with, and I'm not sure who that is, but didn't really get out the way, and that is a lap that Øyvind would like to have back. For sure. That was very interrupted, I'm assuming, by Alex Shanna, who is the only driver that I'm aware of that has a almost AlphaTauri inspired livery. And there he is, trying to return back to the circuit. It was indeed Alex Shanna. Gianluca trying to look to improve on his lap time. Maybe even try to contend with Riley Jacob as well. Hey, I never said that Alex's livery was bad. I just said it looks like an AlphaTauri livery. Not AlphaTauri. Alfa Romeo livery. That's all I said. The color scheme's the same, alright? Don't shoot the messenger here. Gianluca still trying to improve, and you can see from the cars, by the way, that how different these cars are compared to what they were last season. Last season, you could tell these cars were incredibly planted. They were on rails, and through the high-speed stuff, it seems quite similar, but the medium speed, especially in the low speed, you notice these cars have a lot more understeer than they did previously, and it means that they're, through the chicanes, not quite as nimble. So through Sector 1 especially, that is where you'll notice it the most, as Gianluca gets incredibly close to his teammate, but not able to capitalize and go much further on. Do I like them better than last year's cars? I think, for me, it's hard to say. I haven't actually driven them in iRacing yet. This is literally from just what I have seen from people talking about it, from better drivers than myself talking about it, and a lot of just generally watching the car and seeing how the car moves. You can pick up a lot based on that. And for me personally, it's something that I've always liked downforce cars, primarily prototypes. That's been sort of my thing. It's why I do a lot of sports car stuff, a lot of sports car commentary, and get involved in a lot of sports car racing instead of single-seaters. But what it seems to me is what F1 has done here seems very similar to what the World Endurance Championship did, moving from the LMP1s to the hypercars. There was more focus on less downforce, but also to keep the cars still quick with all of the advancements that they've made through ground effect. As Riley Jacob does finally get into the 127.9s, fastest lap so far for him. And going back to the point, it was so the way I see it is if the hypercars handle, like, difference-wise, handle, like, the same as the difference between, like, the W12 to the W13 would be, like, the difference between an LMP1 and a hypercar. What I would probably find is that low-speed stuff feels a little bit worse. Maybe the change of direction isn't quite as good, but once the downforce gets loaded on, it doesn't really feel that much different at all. I prefer the more nimble cars, so the LMP1s and the W12 in this example, this hypothetical, is, for me, personally better. I feel like the lower speed understeer and the mechanical grip isn't quite there in these cars than it was in comparison to last year's. But I suppose they had to find a way to slow down the cars to improve racing, and that's what they've done. You know, these W13s and all of the 2022 F1 cars have definitely proven that the racing is a lot closer. You still have to deal with dirty air, but it's not quite as bad as it used to be. So that's always quite nice. As I still don't know why oh why does that keep showing up? There should be no photos showing up when we're talking about positions on the overlay. It's something I'll have to look through and change as and when we can find it, but yeah, in terms of the cars, definitely prefer the older generation to the newer generation, but I also like my cars to be quite nimble, so that's also the main reason why, is that the mechanical grip is a lot better on the older cars. But talking about the qualifying at least, with 13 and a bit minutes gone, almost 14 minutes gone, looks as though Racing Lab are very much racing away to pole position and looking out the front row of the grid, quickly followed by the Intend team with both one of the Intend sim racing guys and one of the Intend flat out guys joining in third and fourth. I believe Hanez is racing for Intend sim racing, so Intend sim racing third and fifth, Intend flat out I believe are fourth and seventh. I'm pretty sure that's the right teams. They can correct me if I'm wrong, but it would also be nice to, hey guys, maybe settle on a livery for each one. Yeah? I'm just saying. It'd be easier. It'd be easier for me, look. Imagine having a third Intend team. Yeah, but all of the liveries would have to be different. So the main driver for the third Intend team would have to be the same livery as Ben and Gianluca, but then the other car would have to be a completely different livery from everyone else. Because that's what I've noticed. I've noticed that Hanez, we can see Hanez on track at the moment, and the livery's, you know, black, white, and orange. And the orange is the main colour of that team. If we jump on board with Ben, we can see it's red, black, and orange. And if we jump on board with Gianluca, we can see it's red, black, and orange. But Ben and Gianluca are not in the same team. They're in two different parts of the same team. So, I don't know what's going on. And if I jump on board with Rolly, Rolly is white and black. There's no orange on that car at all. So I don't know who's racing for who at this point. I don't know who's racing for who. That's why I guess you know, if you can't decide on your livery for the team, then that's fine, but try to make it a bit easier, you know? Troy Banks is easy to spot, you know. He's got the white into that sort of icy blue with black in the middle. Shanna, again, Alfa Romeo. As Rolly does make it a 3, 4, 5, and 6 for Intense Sim Racing. So, yeah, it's looking as though it's going to be... it's looking like it's going to be a Racing Lab 1-2. Followed off by... Oh my lord, Riley Jacob. What did you just do? 127.691. And gone 4/10 quicker than anyone else on the grid right now. That is... Alright. Alright. He said Silverstone wasn't his greatest circuit, and yet he goes and does that. Okay. I'm flabbergasted. I just have no words as to what he's just done as a driver there. That is Igor levels of fast from those who watched the IFL on one of our first F1 seasons. You may remember how quick Igor was, and yeah, very similar thing happening with Riley Jacob right now. That is, yeah. That's mental. Oh, even Hogland not too far off. Getting into the 127.9s, but you're still 2/10 off your teammate. And yeah, it's looking pretty rough. We may have to I may have to get in touch with maybe some of the league organizers and seeing if we can maybe do like a success ballast thing, so that we can maybe slow down the top guys and bring them closer to the bottom guys. But I'm not sure how we would do that. Just create an entirely new car class specifically for Riley Jacob called BOP. This has reduced power, added weight, everything. It is, yeah, it's a bit ridiculous out here. As indeed we can see now, Ben Goldthorpe for the Intense Sim Racing team. And his teammate, Rolly Schilthert, who's having issues with the livery, hence why he is in a completely different livery. You got the Knox E-Motorsports livery from Troy Banks. All of our liveries, of course, appearing on the screen as well, thanks to SDK's lovely updates. That was definitely a nice feature when they added that one. I found out through another group of people who use the SDK, and they showed that on stream, and one of the broadcasters for that stream was freaking out the entire time and just being like, that looks so good. So, always cool to see. What strat do you expect full send on softs? Definitely for the sprint. It is only, I believe, 8-lap sprint, so you can probably make the softs last 8 laps. As for the main, I would expect soft mediums to be the way to go if you can make it. Obviously, a lot of these top guys definitely practice that for sure. It is by far the fastest strategy if you can make it work. Maybe even mix it up with your teammates, start on mediums, and then the other one switches to softs, while the other one starts on softs and switches to mediums. Could be another way to go. If you wanted to maybe see how good those medium tyres are, how long can they go. That'll be a very good way of finding out. You get a rough idea, so you know how early you can pit for those medium tyres. Relatively early. Or, vice versa, the medium tyre driver can give out information to... Oh, sorry, the soft tyre driver can give out information to the medium tyre driver. And very much mention the fact that, hey, these softs feel pretty good. They can go a couple laps. Of course, I'm not sure whether we have restrictions in place for everyone to have to start on the tyre they qualified on. At least I know in real life it's normally set just for the top 10, and then anyone outside of that top 10 has to, or has free tyre choice. So they'll all get fresh sets, but I don't think necessarily they'll be able to switch from softs to mediums. Unless they can qualify well on mediums. Haven't seen anyone on mediums, though. I must admit. I want to see if I can maybe get the tyre compounds up in my timing screen. We don't have a Joker lap, so I don't know why that's there. For some reason, it is not showing me on my end what tyres people are using, which is a very helpful tool normally. So I just sort of have to guess based on, are people using actual tyres or are they not? I'm pretty sure everyone is on the soft strategy though. Definitely looks like that from here. Alex Shanna probably on softs as well. We'll find out as he turns in. Indeed he is. Still on the softs. Kind of hard to tell with the red wheel covers. Again, those wheel covers do serve a purpose. They were trying to avoid clever tricks with the braking, getting the heat from the brakes into the tires even easier than normal. Alex may be a little bit annoyed that he locked up there. That's why he just drove straight on. Straight into the wall. Not really where you want to end up, but it's fine. We have new cars. The mechanics are lightning fast in simulators, so all is good in the world. That, however, is not how you want to start a lap from Roly Shilter. I'm actually going to double check as well. I want to see whether or not anyone put in some name pronunciations for me in the chat as of last week, but I don't think they did. So, either that means that I got everyone's name right last week, and nobody was disappointed, in which case, hey, that's a plus for me, because I'm British, and I don't know how to pronounce names, like, ever. Or, people just don't want to tell me how to say their name, because they prefer how I say it. That's how I'm gonna put it. Interesting that Roly has switched to a set of mediums. I wonder whether or not he knew he couldn't get another lap in, so just wanted to load the race setup so that it was done. But, yeah, definitely interesting that that happened and he didn't just wait until after. But qualifying done, we will take you through the qualifying results and the grid, of course. Starting, of course, with Riley Jacob being on pole position with Oyvind Haugland, his teammate, there, locking out the front row. Ben Goldthorpe and Gianluca Iliano for the Intend Sim Racing team and Intend Flat Out Sim Racing team. Quickly followed behind with Rolly Schilter and Hannes Schlogel in P5 and P6. Troy Banks and Frank Bisa, P7, P8. Alex Shanna, P9. Manuel Gomez in P10. Followed off by Angel Ponce, not setting a lap time, down in P11. 26 lap race for you all then, as we get ready. Everyone is on the grid. We get the lights come up. To 5 reds we go. It is green, and it looks like it was a pretty good start from some. Not necessarily a good start from others, as already going into turn 1, we have a few issues with some drivers, but it's looking like most people made it pretty clean. I believe that was Manuel Gomez in the background who did crash. But Hannes getting a relatively good start, followed off by most of their teammates. Seems to be the case, as already Riley Jacob and Øyvind Haugland have gone, and they are not going anywhere from themselves, at least. Currently, everyone pretty close on track. Troy Banks a little bit further back. Frank Bisa and Alex Shanna having a little bit of a scrap between themselves. Though I don't think Frank was going to try and send it like Hamilton did on Verstappen, but he does do it. He does send it on the exit. Frank Bisa and Alex Shanna going to go side by side into Maggots and Beckett's. Oh, that was very close between the two of them. Thankfully, no one injured just yet. And their battle's going to continue raging on. Of course, no DRS for the first few laps. Frank on softs, Alex on mediums, so definitely a strategy switch between the two of them. I do wonder whether or not, potentially, there's going to be something to it. Something between those two. If those softs continue to degrade, whether or not Frank is going to be able to get past Alex as quickly as possible. You would expect him to. He kind of needs to get past Alex as quickly as possible to maintain this fight. And I will go back on board with the fight above in the Intend. Just the Intend crew, all 4 of them very similar on track together. Rolly out in front, followed off by Hannes, followed by Ben, followed by... in fact, where did the other one go? Where did Gianluca go? Behind Frank Bisa. I don't know what happened between Gianluca and anyone else. It doesn't look like Gianluca did any mistakes, but he is further down the order than he normally should do. We'll have to see. Maybe we can get an onboard from Frank Bisa's POV of the start. So there he is. Yeah, Gianluca got on the throttle too early into the wall. There's unfortunately a poor start from him. But he is trying to get back. He is trying to fight back. And we will get on screen the intervals between each driver for you, so you can have an idea as to where everybody is. If you see a battle, call it out. I may miss it. But this battle for the Intend teams, definitely the ones that we want to try and see going on for now. We will get to the battle between the two teammates later on, as Riley Jacob does set the fastest lap time so far with a 1:31.1, followed off by Øyvind Haugland with a 1:31.5. No one else into the 1:31s just yet, so the Intend Flat Out Sim Racing team and just the Intend Sim Racing team are going to be battling between themselves. Alex Shanna has left the track for some reason and given a couple of positions, as we just caught the end of that. I wonder what that was. Let's see if maybe we can get a POV of what happened. Wow, just lost it on the throttle. Gianluca gaining a couple of positions already. But Frank Bisa on the attack through Maggots Beckett's. Manuel Gomez already in the pit lane, already having to sort out the damage that they had earlier on. Frank Bisa with DRS going to look to the inside here. Frank Bisa making the move nice and easy. Needs to keep it under control, though. Make sure you don't get attacked right back from Gianluca, especially into the chicane here. Frank doing a good job on those softs, and unfortunately, commentator's curse. He does indeed spin, and that is going to allow Gianluca to come back through. And Frank Bisa's already lost another position to Alex Shanna, and then another further position to Angel Ponce. So we will jump back on board with the inter-team battle here between the Intend Sim Racing teams. Both Intend Flat Out and Intend Sim Racing. You'd be forgiven if you thought that Hannes and the car in front, Rowley, were part of the same team, and the two cars behind them, who is Ben Goldthorpe and Gianluca, well, Troy Banks, then Luca, were all parts of different teams, with maybe Ben and Gianluca being in the same team and Hannes and Rowley being part of the same team. But no, according to the sign-ups and according to the roster, this is how the teams are, with Hannes being for Intend Flat Out and Rowley being for Intend Sim Racing. DRS wide open, of course, for Hannes. Going to try and look to go to the inside of their teammate, and indeed does take that position, gets up to P3. Ben Goldthorpe trying to follow through, but can't really find anything just yet. 4 laps of this 26 lap race have been and gone. So we'll have to wait and see, can Rowley fight back, or potentially are they going to try and work with each other to try and catch up to the back of Oyvind Haugland and Riley. So we'll have to wait and see how that pans out, as it looked like Rowley almost missed the braking zone there into turn 3, and spins out of control royally, and that Rowley incident is going to put him all the way back down into P7. Grass not easy to get out of. We caught the tail end of that spin coming out of the loop. That puts him pretty far down. Alex Shanna looking to maybe capitalize on that, but can't do anything just yet. And then there was only one close battle on track now. That is between Riley Jacob and his teammate Oyvind Haugland. You can see them on track, and you can see how close Oyvind can get with the DRS. It's about half a second per lap, or per straight, I should say, really, with the big, long Wellington straight. And you see how close Oyvind is to his teammate already, due to just one DRS zone. Already looking closer. 131.9 for Riley and a 131.4 for Oyvind. Everyone else behind into the 32s, so it's looking as though the Racing Lab team is going to run away with it. But it's never over till it's over. We have seen already uncharacteristic mistakes from some of the top drivers already. Rody Schilter, a notable name from that list. So I'll have to wait and see how it develops. It looks like Oyvind is on the medium tyres, and his teammate is on the mediums as well. So it didn't look like they were locked into the same tyres that they qualified with. Which is definitely something that you want to see. You want to see a nice open strategy. People opting for different tyres to go different lengths and maybe try and get undercuts and overcuts and just in general see what happens. Of course, the main event being 26 laps. It's a little bit lengthy, but no more lengthy than the race we had last week, of course. Last week was more laps, but quicker lap times. Owen Horgland dropping back from Riley Jacob this last lap by about a tenth. And that's probably going to be reflected in the lap times, and indeed it is. So one more time is Owen Horgland not really able to catch up. One man who is on the charge, however, is Ben Goldthorpe on his teammate, Hannes Schlegel. Have to keep an eye. Can the Brit do it? At his home circuit, of course, is Silverstone. Ben Goldthorpe with DRS now. Going to try and get incredibly close to Hannes, but probably doesn't want to make a move just yet. Just wants to sit behind, maybe save his tyres a little bit as well. Maybe even save a little bit of fuel if you can, if you were under-fueling the car. I know that was a strategy that people used to use sometimes, was they was underfuel the car. Underfuel the car very slightly if they were behind someone. For example, like Oyvind and Riley. And then use the fact that you gain speed in the DRS zones as well as gain a little bit of fuel saving if you're never really going for a pass, just always lifting off a little bit less. Sorry, a little bit more. Using the throttle a little bit less over the course of a lap. May give you a little bit of time as well as move potentially on here. It's Ben Goldthorpe. He definitely jinxed to make that move, and indeed into the braking zone he goes. Right through does Ben Goldthorpe on his teammate Hannes. And Hannes just now has to sit back, and potentially the leapfrog is going to happen. It's going to continue happening throughout this race, I'm sure. 132 is now starting to set in for the Racing Lab team, so maybe the tyres are already starting to fade off for those guys. Ben Goldthorpe still into the 132s, so his tyres looking still pretty fresh, still pretty good. Did notice a few mistakes from a couple of other drivers into the 1 minute 34s as well, so unfortunately those drivers who are in the 34s maybe not finding the best of luck, not really finding their rhythm around the Silverstone circuit. It is a circuit that is pretty difficult to find your rhythm around. Once you find it, indeed, it is rather exciting stuff. Circuit in general, really, really nice. Definitely has had its moments. I definitely preferred the previous layouts, the 2009, or the 2008, 2009 Abbey layouts, where you went under the bridge. It was iconic. That's that bridge. Unfortunately, had to get rid of it when they did an entire remodeling of the circuit, basically, for that sector. Added in the loop. The new Sector 1 now, as we know it. But there was just something nice about having Maggots Beckett's be pretty early on in the lap, rather than now, pretty late in the lap. And just the bridge section as well was just always to me seemed very cool. And there are some scenic camera shots that we'll maybe see through warm-up that you'll actually be able to see the old bridge section. It is still here, modelled within iRacing, of course. I believe you can actually, maybe, still race on it in the platform, but I haven't seen those be raced at for a little while, of course. They tend to opt for the new modern layout instead of the old school layouts. I could be mistaken, though, as Manuel Gomez has had another incident further down the field. Not having the greatest day is our Manuel. Ben Goldthorpe having a pretty good run of it, though, away from his teammate already, and putting ground between the two, even though DRS, of course, is involved. And I'm trying to see why. That's not what I wanted to do. Sorry about that. I wanted to try and see why the timer is up on the display when it shouldn't be. And try and see if I can maybe change the way that works, but we can do that later. All we need to care about is the amount of laps. And there has indeed been 9 tours of the island so far. up to a maximum of 26, where we will find out who our race winner is. And to be honest, it's looking like it is definitely going to go the way of Riley Jacob. Untouched, really, you would have to say. Followed off by Oyvind, with Ben Goldthorpe sitting in P3 relatively comfortably now, having broken the DRS from Hannes. Shanna makes another mistake, crashes out, and Frank Bisa manages to get past. We'll have to wait and see what happens here with Frank. Oh, sorry, with Alex even. Into the braking zones. Oh, that is just, yeah, unlucky. Comes across a back marker. And oh dear, I want to say Frank Bisa made contact there with him as well. Potential damage. No, no potential damage. It's just a little bit of an off track. Trying to make his way through the back marker of, I believe that was Manuel Gomez. But back on board with Ben Goldthorpe as the race seems to have died down a little bit for our feature. Very similar lap times between the two teammates of Ben Goldthorpe and Hannes Schlegel. Gianluca and Rowley also not really having the best time of it, not really able to set similar lap times, sort of trading fastest laps back and forth. As Frank Bisa does come into the pits on the soft tyre strategy. Pits on lap 10, so you would imagine then, if you went 10 laps on softs, Riley Jacobs going to come into the pits probably around about lap 16, lap 17, take them all the way to the end. Alex Shanna already coming in potentially with damage, not necessarily coming in with anything else. Indeed, he is into his box for 4.1 seconds, so maybe a tyre change as well. Was on the mediums to begin with, so surprised that he's coming out on another set of mediums. Frank coming out apparently on another set of softs. I don't believe that to be true. I would expect him to come out on a set of mediums and go all the way to the end now. So, potentially, iRacing giving me the good old spectator glitch that we know and love, where we cannot see the tyre differences if we aren't on board with them in the pit stop. Just even more things that I have to look out for. But it's all good. These drivers on the right set of tyres, mediums for Ben Goldthorpe, making them last pretty dang well, all things considered. But it's looking like it's getting a little bit harder for him to manage those tyres, as Frank Bisa has caught up in a big way to Angel Ponce. This is a battle for position. Angel Ponce, of course, hasn't even pit yet, and Frank Bisa right up the inside. Angel Ponce not really battling that one too hard. Knows potentially they're coming into the pit lane anyway. What's the point in fighting? And Frank Bisa gains another position up into P8. I may have to apologise to him for the commentator's curse that I gave him pre-stream. I said maybe I'll see him in the commentary booth, and whoops. My bad, Frank. My bad. We'll get back on board with Ben Goldthorpe, see if Hannes can actually start to try and battle their way through. Oyvind coming into the pit lane is an interesting one. Definitely. Oyvind coming into the pit lane on a set of medium tyres. Let's see what tyres he changes from. Might not be able to see it behind the barrier, of course. But it's straight up, change tyres, straight back down again. And apparently another set of mediums, so I'm starting to maybe think that these These tyres just don't like changing the colour. No, there we go. We saw Rowley's tyres change colour. And look a lot brighter, look a lot fresher. Rowley going for a set of softs to the end is going to be definitely very interesting indeed. As Oyvind on the new tyres already trying to make his way through. Past Gianluca, and they're still battling side by side. Gianluca trying to fight for everything he's got, not making it easy for Oyvind, who has indeed pit. Gianluca hasn't yet. What you're doing by doing this, of course, is you are basically holding up Oyvind. Riley's going to be thanking himself, I'm sure, for not having to fight this fight. Gianluca finally giving up that position. Does make it past, and indeed will continue on, and has to try and get through Troy Banks, Hannes, Ben Goldthorpe, and Riley. And interesting to note that none of the other top runners have pit yet. Rowley came in for the pit last lap by switch to a set of softs. So thinking you can go 13 laps on softs is a bold call. It's an interesting strategy, Cotton. We'll have to see how it plays out for him. Of course, if you know, you know. It'll be interesting to see when Ben Goldthorpe pits. Maybe trying to see sort of the time loss that he had compared to everyone else in the pits. And seeing whether or not he can kind of play it by ear and see whether or not he can actually gain a little bit of time, as Riley Jacob is indeed in the pit lane for the first time. And probably the only time. You'd have to imagine Ben Goldthorpe responding almost immediately. Hannes doing the same thing. You would imagine then Troy Banks comes into the pit lane to do the exact same thing as well. There it is, a set of softs for Riley Jacob. It is a little bit of a missed pit box from Ben Goldthorpe, as his teammate Hannes behind switches to another set of mediums, which again is not right. Ben Goldthorpe on the softs, of course. Everyone else having pit, changed tyres. Oyvind setting the fastest lap last time by because of that, and is now incredibly close to his teammate, who is going to get held up by Riley Jacob a little bit. I'm sorry, is his teammate Riley Jacob getting held up by Troy Banks a little bit, I should have said. Troy Banks, knowing he's not really in the fight, makes it pretty easy for Riley. Is he going to make it as easy for Oyvind? We'll have to wait and see. Oyvind having a pretty good, easy time of it through Maggotts Beckett. It's not really able to get affected too much by the dirty air, but on exit, of course, it's going to make it quite difficult with the DRS Troy has on Riley. It means that maybe Oyvind can't really fight back. Isn't really close, you would have to say. Oyvind now makes it through as Troy comes into the pit lane. So Oyvind and Riley separated by a second after the pit stop window. Then Goldthorpe a further 11 seconds back with a 1 second gap over his teammate, who is Hannes. Then we have another 7 second gap to Rowley, followed off by a 6 second gap from Rowley to Gianluca. So still all to play for the win of this race. 10 laps to go. Oyvind is going to try and make it interesting at the end, you would have to imagine. And judging by the... Yeah, judging by the lap times and the top speeds for the drivers around this circuit, it seems as though Riley and Oyvind have opted for a little bit more of a higher downforce strategy than a lot of other drivers. I'll see if I can get the top speeds of each driver's up on your screen for you. Indeed, there you are, in miles an hour. If you want that converted to kilometers an hour, I can also let you know. But the top speeds of each driver, relatively similar until you get to Troy Banks, where I kind of don't really know how that has come about. Riley Jacob getting the fastest lap so far from his teammate with a 1:30.131, almost getting towards qualifying pace. But everyone's seeming to be relatively similar in top speed, I think. The major difference is coming from who has had DRS when they hit their top speed versus everyone else. And I am interested to see potentially what has changed track-wise. It is 19C air with a 19C track. It's still partly cloudy, of course, as you can see. The clouds are ever looming. But 19C is incredibly cold. I mean, it's what you would expect from Britain, arguably. It is arguably what you would expect for the UK around about May time. I can't actually remember when the sim date was set to. In sim time was set to the 21st of January 2023. So, yes, cold is basically what that translates to. Of course, while we have a moment, I do want to give a massive shout out to all of our sponsors as well for helping us put on the productions that we do. Every single one of them doing an absolute great job and providing good quality content and good quality products for very competitive prices. Of course, Butt Kicker, one of the main sources of improving immersion within your sim rigs. You will certainly feel the difference with a good Butt Kicker setup. Extreme Scoring, we'll hear from them a little bit later on during the warm-up, as always when we run the commercial, but they help us a lot with organising a league, helping us keep on track with everything points related, everything driver sign-up related, any admin style stuff. Extreme Scoring, if you're setting up a league, definitely the people to go to, definitely the people to get set up with. And Capral Sim Racing, if you need anything sim racing gear wise, Capral is your place to go. Anything high end, anything that you need potentially, maybe custom stuff if you speak nicely enough to them. Who knows what they can do. Of course, small team, but definitely one to look for if you want to get some of the better quality sim racing gear out there. Capral Sim Racing do an amazing job. And then Family Money. Another one of our sponsors. Into Objects AB is the company for that one. Which helps you keep track of family allowances, helping you live a little easier. But 18 laps gone, almost 19 laps, as we are halfway through this race. And Riley Jacob has started to run away from his teammate. Gap now up to 3.2 seconds. 3.3 seconds, so... yeah, an unfortunate situation has been put in the place of Riley. Oyvind, where he's quick enough to be quite comfortably up there with his teammate, but not necessarily quick enough to challenge his teammate. As Alex Shanna into the pits for a second time. Interesting decision there. Maybe trying to put on another set of softs, go for fastest lap right at the end of this session. Has to be a 1 minute 30.13, so qualifying mode engaged. And even then, I'm not sure if it would be enough. You see how tricky the loop is, always balancing the throttle there to not spin the car around unnecessarily. I definitely feel like with some of the drivers in this grid, I mean, we've got Manuel Gomez, Angel Ponce, and Alex Shanna starting first, second, and third for the sprint race, which is a 10-lap race where Riley Jacob will start from the back with his teammate and try to make it all the way through to the front. And that's not exactly going to be an easy feat. You have to get through 10 other cars to make it there, of course. But we'll have to see how it goes. We'll have to see how Riley intends to attack the sprint later on after our warm-up session. And of course, the warm-up will be a place for us all to refresh, grab a drink, grab some snacks, because the sprint is always the most exciting part of these races, of course. Has to be held as the second part of the race, which is a little bit unfortunate, but incident with Rowley, then, that has allowed Troy Banks to get through. Interesting to see what has happened here. Rowley has just pulled off to the side of the road. And gone, seemingly. He's got back going again, but even still, Guanluca's now right on the back of him. So, no idea what happened there. Maybe a slowdown penalty. He did get an off track, but that wasn't super early. Oh, sorry, super late. So let's see where this off track came from. Yeah, that'll do it. That'll give you a slowdown penalty. That was enough. That's what allowed him to come through, and we come back to Rowley having a spin and crashing out. I'm not sure if anything happened between himself and Guanluca. Let's see if we can get an on-board on this. So Rowley getting on the throttle here and just spins. His teammate getting through. And that is unfortunate. Going from bad to worse is that incident from Rowley. And again, another slowdown penalty for Rowley. Which I don't think it's going to invite Frank Bisa in, but not being that far back, but even still, if you're not careful, you may end up in a situation where actually you've put two people ahead of you that probably shouldn't be ahead of you, and cost yourself quite a few points in the championship. That may end up mattering, especially considering you have a win under your belt as well from the first round sprint. So unless there's some tactics being played and he's just trying to get a little bit further down in the sprint, sorry, a little bit further up on the grid in the sprint, and a little bit further down in the main race, but surely you would want most of your points to come from the main race, unless you believe you are actually able to hold off from, honestly, a dominant drive from the Racing Lab 2 of Riley Jacob and Oyvind Haugland. So, interesting things afoot, definitely, for Rowley. But it has promoted this man, Troy Banks, further up the field, gaining 2 positions so far, highest gainer with Hannes up there as well. So 4th and 5th for those two. And again, a pretty comfortable drive from Ben Goldthorpe once he finally got past his teammate in Hannes, but Hannes has been right on top of him almost the entire time. So it's not like it's been a race where Ben has just been able to relax even if he makes a mistake. No, he still needs to keep on it, still needs to keep going, because if he does make a mistake, Hannes will be right back on top of him, maybe even past him. As we saw from Rowley now going into the pit lane. I wonder if that's going to be just for a tyre change. Maybe go for fastest lap as well. Try having a little bit of issues getting on power there as well. As I'm not sure who that was behind. That was Alex Shanna, I believe, once again going off the pit. Going off the straight and coming back. Coming back on circuit behind, just getting out of the way of Gianluca. As Gianluca tries to hunt down Troy Banks, our closest battle on track so far. 3 more laps to go. 3 more tours of this, I believe, 3.6 kilometer circuit. I should really know that, given the fact that it is my home circuit too. Sorry, 3.6 miles. It's 5.89 kilometers. I was going to say, a 3 kilometer circuit, 3.6 kilometer circuit would be a little bit small. You'd almost be looking at Monaco levels of small at that point. Yeah, 3.6 miles, not 3.6 kilometers. And if Gianluca can keep up this pace, and if Troy Banks keeps making mistakes, we may see a battle brewing in the final lap of this race for a change in 5th position, which is not an inconsequential amount of points difference. Riley Jacob back into the 131s as well. So Riley definitely just cruising, probably in his own head, but fastest man on track and a little bit unbeatable. I might have to have a little bit of words about him saying that this was his weak track. If this is his weak track, I feel sorry for everyone else for the rest of the season, because they ain't going to be able to get close. Oyvind maybe saying that he'd be able to fight back against his teammate and not really showing that he can just yet. He was close, but not quite close enough. The difference between Ben Goldthorpe and Hannes as well, the gap starting to increase for those guys, as well as we are rounding out near the end of the session. Only two more tours around the island for Riley Jacob. He's got this lap to finish plus 1 more. And it's looking like, once again, the Race Lab teams have been pretty dominant. It reminds me, as always, of how Igor did it in the very first season of the F1 series that we hosted here at IFL. The Pleb Racing team, which was an interesting name choice because definitely the driver who did most of the work for that team, it felt like, was Igor, winning almost every round seemingly possible. Had an unlucky couple results, notably at Suzuka, maybe not his quickest circuit. Lovely camera work as well, provided by the ever lovely track cams for Gourmet. If you want to get yourself some ridiculously nice looking iRacing cameras, go give him a look. Give him a little bit of support as well, because these cameras do take a little while to perfect and get everything right. They just make everything look ever so nice, don't they? As we do start entering into the final lap of this main event. Followed off by a sprint shortly. Gianluca still trying to push, still trying to fight, and maybe overtake Troy Banks for 5th position, and he's getting ever closer. He might have DRS. No, probably not DRS here. But if he can stay close enough, he may pick up DRS for the Wellington Straight. If he can get within 5/10 of Troy Banks, then down the Wellington Straight, that's going to be all you need to make that move into the final couple of corners. So stay on board with Gianluca. We'll stay on board with this fight. It's looking like this will be one going down to the wire. Gianluca probably wishing we had an extra lap, to be fair, as he would absolutely love to try and go one more time, as indeed Riley Jacob will win the race relatively convincingly with a 1:32.706. That's his last lap time. Oyvind Haugland finishing 2nd for that team, the Race Labs team. Gianluca, unfortunately, not getting DRS down in the Wellington Straight, so probably not going to be challenging through the final couple of corners unless he massively dives it up the inside or Troy makes a mistake. Ben Goldthorpe and Hannes Schlegel finishing 3rd and 4th. Troy Banks finishing 5th, with Gianluca finishing 6th. One more lap, and you probably would have seen Gianluca start to try and push for that lap time. Rowley soon to come across the line in 7th. Alex Shanna finishing in 9th. Rowley, Frank, and Angel, the only drivers left to cross the line. Frank has to navigate the final couple of corners with Angel in tow. And that'll be it for us in the main event. But of course, we do have our warm-up, and then we do have our sprint as well to come. So Frank Bisa finishing in 8th, with Angel Ponce finishing in 10th. And now we go to a warm-up where we can use the time for a lot of drivers to chill. Anybody who had an unfortunate race can relax a little. Get back to it for the main sprint that we will have here. But our Heat 1 results up on your screen, of course, as always. We do have Riley Jacob taking the win for the Racing Lab team, followed off by Oyvind Haugland in 2nd place. Ben Goldthorpe rounding out our podium positions for Inten Sim Racing, with Hannes for the Inten Flat Out Sim Racing team. Troy Banks finishing 5th for the Noxie Motorsports team, with Gianluca Iliano in the Inten Flat Out Sim Racing team, finishing P6. Rowley Schilter finishing P7 for the Inten Sim Racing team, with Frank Bisa finishing 8th for the Biso Racing team. Alex Shanna for the Lumossi Motorsports team, finishing 9th. Angel Ponce for Team Marsinger in 10th. And in last position, we do have Manuel Gomez for the Team Messenger team, down there in 11th. And of course, take those positions, flip them around, and that will be our grid for the main event. Well, I say the main event, the sprint, which classifies as the main event here in iRacing for some reason. And it is all going to kick off, of course, shortly after a word from our sponsor, Extreme Scoring.
Allow Extreme Scoring to do the work for you.
And of course, if you do want to get anything league related sorted out, Extreme Scoring massively helping us, as I mentioned earlier. So big shout out to them, as we have 2.5 minutes left in the warm-up session to go, and then we will obviously head off to the sprint race. And if you're anything like me, this is the one you are excited for, because it's going to be chaos. I'm hoping that some people are practicing their starts, unlike potentially what happened last week, where the starts weren't the greatest, I will admit. Ooh, big incident from Rowley there, clipping the grass, and yeah, in warm-up, maybe not the thing you really want to do is take off those Pirelli tyres. I was thinking Gianluca was maybe going to try and practice a little bit of a start. Maybe Angela's. Let's see. Indeed they are. A little bit of a slow getaway, but definitely a clean one nonetheless. Let's see whether or not Troy Banks practices to start as well. Nope, he's just pounding around on circuit, trying to get in a few more laps. But let me know, everybody in the chat, where are you from? Who are you supporting for the sprint after seeing the performances in our main event? As we see Manuel Gomez doing a little bit of the donuts there. And here we are, gridding up for our sprint race. We will go over the grid for the sprint race, of course. It is basically the results of the sprint reverse, with Manuel Gomez and Angel Ponce taking pole positions and second place, followed off by Alex Shanner and Frank Bisa in third and fourth. Rowley Schulter and Gianluca Iliano P5 and 6. Troy Banks P7, Hannes Schogel in P8, with Ben Goldthorpe P9, Oyvind Haugland P10, and Riley Jacob starting in last position. Of course, 8 laps here. It's going to be an interesting one for sure, as we get to the 5 red lights. And we are green for the sprint race. And once again, it doesn't look like it was a great start from a lot of people. It looks like Rowley was able to take the advantage early on. We'll have to watch further back, as there seems to be massive amounts of chaos breaking through, with Manuel Gomez being forced off the circuit. Gianluca also having some issues as well further down the field, and a couple of other drivers also having even more issues, as the Racing Lab team are trying to just make their way through, and everybody battling everyone else. And there seems to be a tangle up with Riley Jacob already, and that is going to be definitely looked at post-race, I would imagine. Riley and Ben Goldthorpe. And not really where you want to be, as there's already another incident there. Oyvind Haugland spinning around. And I wonder whether or not that's Oyvind by himself spinning around. But that is huge for the championship, as that means Riley Jacob maybe is going to take an even bigger gap on his teammate than he normally would. Alex Shanner already being passed by Hannes Schlegel after going a little bit wide there into turn, I believe that's 8 or 9. Hannah Schlegel having to try and fight back against Troy Banks. You would imagine all of these drivers are going to get past Angel Ponce pretty quickly, and indeed Troy Banks tries to. Angel doing a good job at holding the outside line, but immediately fighting back is Hannes into the braking zone. Move done. And that is that job made ever easier. Rowley already massively out to a lead. And Alex Shanna and Riley Jacob are both into the pit lane. Riley Jacob has crashed here because of Alex Shanna, unfortunately, on the racing line. That is very unfortunate for Riley. And we'll see why Alex Shanna went off circuit. That looks incredibly odd to me. Let's see if we can maybe try and rewind it and see why on earth this was happening. As I accidentally clicked the live button instead. But, yeah. Alex Shanna going wide on around the entire corner. Still on the racing line when Riley Jacob gets there. And, yeah, unfortunate for Riley. Hits the back end of Alex, and that is his race over and done with. You would have to say, because he's in the pit lane now and probably down a lap as well. Oyvind Haugland also a lot further down than you'd expect him to be. Ben Goldthorpe trying to attack on his teammate, try and finish in a third place, and it looks like the sprint has caused absolute calamity here at the IFL. Rowley Schilter doing a great job, having an amazing start off the beginning. Almost had fastest lap of the race, but that goes to Troy Banks at the moment with a 1:31.249. Hannes having to fight from... Oh, sorry, Troy having to fight from Hannes. We'll wait and see who switches with who, as it looks like the Intent team is trying to make it a 1-2-3-4, and without the added pressure of the Racing Lab team, you'd have to imagine that is, yeah, one we're going to have to discuss, I'm sure. Rowley Schilter, having got off to a great start, has just stormed away and done what Riley did pretty much in the main event and the main sprint, the main Grand Prix. Need to figure out a better wording to use for that one. But, yeah, Hannes all the way on the back of Troy Banks and trying to make Troy Banks go down the order. But obviously, Troy is not going to give that position up easily, you would have to imagine. But with the DRS, with the soft tyres, with the slipstream, push to pass, all she said and all she wrote is done and gone. Hannes all the way through. Troy Banks having, unfortunately, no way to really fight back. Not yet, anyway. If Troy can stay close, potentially, he can come back and fight his way through with DRS assistance next lap by. Hannes is 1:30.3, currently the fastest lap of the race, but didn't count due to an off-track. So the fastest lap so far is going to Gianluca Iliano. Further down the field, Oyvind Haugland trying to make his way through Manuel Gomez. And you would imagine this is going to be pretty easy doing into the braking zones. But no, giving himself some time, giving himself some space is Oyvind. And I believe the mistake from Manuel Gomez has allowed Oyvind Haugland, combined his first and second names there. That's going to allow him to attack good old Frank Bisa, part of the Bisa sim racing team. I wonder if Bisa can hold him off. I wonder if the pressure is going to be too much at some point. Angel Ponce doing a great job so far of just keeping up there, further up the timing sheets than they normally would be. Ben Goldthorpe, of course, looking to upset that day and push him one spot further down. And Goldthorpe with DRS assistance down the main straight. You would imagine this is move said and done. Pulls out. Still with DRS, of course. Does it even before the braking zone. And that is move done. Nigel now has to look behind for a hard-charging Frank Bisa. As Rowley into the 131s, the low 131s. As touch there, I believe Oyvind actually touches Frank Bisa around and makes that move a little bit of a punt to pass rather than a push to pass. Let's see, on board Oyvind, yeah, you see that contact being made. Naughty from him, but unfortunately, when the racing is close, it does end up like that, as Troy Banks does make his way back past Guanluca. So Guanluca able to fight for a little bit. And then Troy Banks immediately straight back through. As Frank Bisa, due to that incident with Oyvind Horgan, has actually lost the position to Manuel Gomez. As that speed cam giving a great sense of just how fast these F1 cars are. I wonder if Troy is going to get a slowdown penalty for cutting that much through Meggetts Beckett's into Chapel. Of course, DRS wide open. Guanluca trying to fight it. Has to leave room on the outside for Troy to get back through, and does so. We have side-by-side battling here at Silverstone. Troy Banks trying to make it a P3 for the Nox E-Motorsports team, which would mean it was his first, I believe, first podium here in this series. Guanluca looking to try and upset the day and make it currently an intense sim racing 1-2-3 if he makes that. And Troy doing an amazing job, of course. Trying to make his way through. And we are almost already near the end of the sprint race. Blink and you'll miss it, apparently, is the message that we are receiving. Troy Banks still trying to fight his way back past Guanluca once Guanluca made it with DRS assistance, but if Troy is patient, if he can sit behind Guanluca and doesn't lose too much time trying to fight him in the corners, with DRS assistance down that main straight, he's probably going to find that he will catch up and be able to make the move relatively easy. You almost want the moves to come after the Wellington straight, not before it, so you can make sure that you don't get attacked back on the next lap. So you have the entirety of Sector 1 to place your claim. As Guanluca doing a bit of weaving, trying to break the slipstream. DRS assistance, a little bit of the dirty air from Troy, and Guanluca still able to hold off this position so far. Rody doing a great job with Hannes. Everyone around about the same lap times, except for Troy Banks. That last lap into the 1 minute 33 is due to being passed, and then maybe making a couple of other mistakes as well. Oyvind still trying to capitalize on the fact that his teammate is no longer around, so any points that goes in the way of Oyvind is actually going to benefit him. And we do only have 2 laps left to go here in the sprint portion of this race. Oyvind up the inside of Manuel Gomez. You can imagine with DRS assistance, that is move done and dusted. Into the braking zone, and sorry, it was Angel Ponce, not Manuel Gomez that he's got past, and that is Oyvind through. And it's looking unlikely that Oyvind's going to catch Ben here, but it might happen. If Ben makes a mistake, it could happen. Unlikely, of course, though. I believe now 1 more lap to go. We'll be entering onto the final lap. This lap round. Rowley just crossing the line now. Puts us onto the final lap, as Troy Banks is still trying to keep on board with Guanluca and trying his absolute hardest to upset Guanluca's day and get back onto that podium spot. And of course, if Guanluca holds it off, it will be an intense sim racing 1-2-3. Whether or not they're in the same team or not, I still cannot work out, and I'll probably ask them that in the interview as to who is actually with who. Maybe something we can have a look at later on as well. But final lap of the sprint. And it looks as though Troy Banks might not be able to make his way past Gianluca, as the gap has extended a little bit as well. And if Hannes isn't careful, Hannes will have Gianluca to deal with on the final lap, which is not ideal, you must admit. The two teammates, Gianluca and Hannes, apparently in the same team, but I will wait until I hear confirmation of that one. Troy Banks, unfortunately, not close enough this time by to get DRS assistance, so unless there's a mistake here from Gianluca into the chicane, as we will jump on board with our race leader so far, that will be a win for Rowley, followed off by Hannes, Gianluca, Troy Banks, and Belden Goldthorpe will come through a little bit later on as well. And here he is, Ben Goldthorpe crossing the line for P5, Oyvind Haugland. Probably a disappointing P6 for Oyvind, you'd have to imagine. As Angel Ponce will come through to finish P7. Emmanuel Gomez and Frank Bisa. See how close they are on track together. Finishing out 8th and 9th. Alex Shanna being a DNF from earlier on, and Riley Jacob also being a DNF. But, whew, that's it for the sprint. I'm going to try and get my breath back now. That was, yeah. That was a little bit hectic, that. I'm going to try and get my breath back, and we will also bring up the results, of course, for our feature race. As that is not the right point system. We will try that again. I can't even remember where I go to set that. But that is definitely not the feature point system. That's not what that should be. This should be... hopefully. There you go. Those are the updated points for our feature race, with Rowley taking 12 points, and of course winner here at Silverstone, Hannes, with 11 points, followed by Gianluca Eliano finishing P3, rounding out our podium for the Intend 1, 2, 3. It was almost looking like it was going to be Troy Banks finishing up on that podium, but Gianluca doing a great job at defending from that one. Ben Goldthorpe finishing P5 behind Troy Banks. Oyvind Haugland for the Racing Lab team. Pretty unfortunate P6, you would have to say. You would expect them to probably be a little bit further up, but Angel Ponce, Manuel Gomez finishing P7 and P8. Frank Bisa finishing P9, and Riley Jacob finishing P10, and then Alex Shanna rounding out in P11. Of course, we will have to wait and see, get some people's thoughts as to what happened, because that race is a little bit unfortunate for some of them. And we will get Riley Jacob in here for an interview. Winner of course, the main event, but unfortunately a little bit lucky in the sprint race. Hey, Riley, man. Obviously, winning out in the main GP portion of the race, but a little bit of an unlucky and unfortunate incident between yourself and Alex Shanna in the sprint race. I'm sure a little bit gutted by that one. But in terms of the main event, how did you feel on how the main GP race went? You said Silverstone was going to be a bit of a rubbish track for you, and it ended up looking pretty good, at least for the GP portion.
Well, I thought the track was actually going to have more grip than it did because of the low temperatures, but man, the track did not feel good, especially on the mediums, and Oyvind was super quick in the first stint. So I thought we were in for a good one, but then he got unlucky after he pitted and got held up, and I had 2 lap fresher tires and came out in front of him still, and I was just able to pull away.
And of course, the main event, obviously having that Racing Lab 1-2 must feel pretty good. But in terms of the sprint, I'm sure you probably don't want to talk about it. But what happened from your point of view?
It was just unlucky all around. See, I went into it with the mentality of just take what I can get, just be safe. And I think turn 4, I got forced off the track, and then Oyvind lost the car in front of me, and I slowed down, and I think another driver ran to the back of me, so they probably picked up damage. And then coming up to the turn before the chicane, the closing speed on one of the drivers on the racing line was just too much for me to react, and I just had nowhere to go.
Yeah, of course, a little bit unfortunate, but hey, at least you got a win in the main event, so there is that. So you can take something away from this weekend, at least.
I will take that.
And I believe, even though Oyvind, of course, will have outscored in the feature, I believe you will be ahead in the championship still, but only just. I think is how that's going between you two. Constantly battling, of course, is the Racing Lab team, but Riley, mate, in terms of the main event, did you have any sort of strategy going into it? Were you pretty confident it was going to be medium soft all the way, or did you have a little bit of a doubt in your mind?
Yeah, I was confident it was going to be medium softs. I just I wanted to push the mediums as far as I could because it seemed like the tires were dropping off way faster than I expected. So I tried to push those mediums out as far as I could and get on the softs and only run them for like 10, 11 laps.
And of course, it seemed to work out. Your teammate doing pretty similar of a strategy as well. It seemed like you two were pretty on board together. You kind of knew what you were doing, and yeah, just as I say, main event, really good result, and then just unfortunate in the sprint. But of course, we look towards next week. I'm trying to just get the calendar up so I can see where we are. I believe that is Spa in not next week, but the week after. And in terms of Spa as a circuit, how do you feel about that one?
It's going to depend on the track conditions, I believe, because in certain conditions, the track has grip and it feels good. But in the iRacing official series that had Spa a couple weeks ago, we ran it, and the grip was horrendous. So it's all kind of dependent on what the track conditions will be like for the week.
I would imagine, given the fact that they seem to be adamant that every race is going to be ran in January in the calendar, at least in iRacing conditions, it's probably going to be relatively cold. So maybe worth getting in a bit of cold weather practice as well for the Belgian GP. Of course, there will be practice sessions being hosted, so I'm sure you'll be out there on there and grinding laps in your own time as well. But Riley, mate, before we let you go, is there anyone else you want to give a shout out to? Any last sort of thoughts and things you want to say on stream before you head off and celebrate the main event win?
Yeah, shout out to Racing Lab Esports, and shout out to my teammate Oyvind for also pulling in second place and doing all right in the sprint, recovering.
There you go. There you have it. And we will indeed hear from his teammate now, Oyvind, who finished second place in the main event and a 6th in the end in the sprint. Let's bring him in here. Oyvind, mate, congratulations on a 2nd place in the main event and a good recovery drive earlier on in the sprint, putting you up to 6th position. How do you feel the race went for you in terms of race 1 and race 2?
Race 1, congratulations to me, I am the first loser. Riley was just way too quick. I was struggling to keep up with him, even with DRS, and then I had some small mistakes, and then I went outside his DRS, and after that it was quite difficult to keep his pace. He was phenomenal on this track, so I don't know what drugs he uses or what kind of fuel he uses, but I think that should be shared with the rest of the team. So there might be some controversy afterwards. But it was a fun race. I tried to undercut him, but I got stuck in some traffic, and I don't think it would have worked either way. He just had a little bit more pace than I had. As for race 2, that was interesting. That was very interesting. So a couple of incidents there. So somebody spun in front of me. So not much I could do. Got some damage to my wing. And then I got a voodoo doll on the side of the rig that has Riley's name on it, and it's like right when he came to later in that first lap, I just pinched a needle in there, and suddenly somebody was going slow, and he ran out of the race.
That explains everything.
Yeah.
So, a bit of a voodoo magic going on with Oyvind then, and maybe not what you want to be doing with your teammate, I'm sure, but hey, I mean, maybe you just want to spice up the championship fight, you know, that's always a talking point. I did mention it with Riley, I'm pretty sure the points are still going in his favour, but only just. I believe you two are right back together again, as per always, and yeah, I mean, going into Spa next week, how are you feeling about that one? We've spoken a bit about track conditions and how Spa can be a little bit of a beast to tame in that front, but how are you feeling about it?
I kind of like it when it gets slippery. So things can happen, but yeah, it's a fast track. So for me, it's not one of my best tracks when it's they're really fast. So like the slower tracks with more like funky turns and stuff, it's more up my alley. So, but I like the track, so I think it's gonna be some good fun. And so I'm just gonna take away my wings and get a really low ride height, so I can keep up with him on the straights, I think.
So completely ignoring Sector 2 and just going for Sector 1 and 3, just blitzing it down in the straight line and hope that's enough. So
exactly,
the strategy.
My voodoo game.
Well, hey, it seems to be a thing that happens between teammates, is this good old curse that develops, because in a couple of other series that I've seen as well, that seems to be quite common, is teammates cursing each other. And hopefully that doesn't continue and maybe you two actually battle on track instead later on in the season to decide who wins the championship. That would be very cool to see. But
problem. He's too quick. He's too quick. I gotta do something. It must have been really boring to commentate. Now he's up 6 seconds in front of David. Now it's 7 seconds. It must be so boring. I'm trying everything I can here. No.
Well, I appreciate you trying, and of course, you know, maybe I can make it a bit better with the good old commentator's curse that I seem to be giving out literally every week. So hey, maybe we could spice things up together. Who knows?
now I like the way you're thinking.
But of course, Oyvind, as always, mate, and of course Riley as well, joining me in the booth. You two, both amazing results in Heat. I was gonna say Heat 1, but it's the main event, the GP race. Obviously, you two taking first and second. Congratulations to both of you and Oyvind. Before we let you go, mate, is there anyone else you want to give a shout out to?
Always, I have a very nice girlfriend that's not yelling at me because I'm racing on a Saturday evening in Norway. And yeah, thanks to you guys. Thanks for the battle, Riley. I'm going to try to become faster so you have some kind of a challenge at least.
I think I got to get a voodoo doll too now.
Yeah, I think so. We're going to send pictures of our voodoo dolls for the next next broadcast.
If you can do that, I'll put them up on the stream as well.
Perfect.
But yeah, congratulations to both of you as always, and of course, massive shout out to the Racing Lab team. You guys do an incredible job, and we'll see you out not next week but the week after for the Belgium Grand Prix at Spa. And again, congratulations on a first and second in the main event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
And then we will see if we can get Ben Goldthorpe in here, who, of course, finished on the podium in our main event. Ben, mate, how are you doing? Obviously, finishing third place here for the feature race, our main event, the GP. And pretty good result for yourself. You managed to get past Hannes relatively early on in the race and seemed to control it from there. Of course, it wasn't without its challenge.
Yeah, I had mediocre start, I'd say. I've dropped down to 5th, I think, on the first lap. Just trying to rebuild from there, really. I think I knew I had the pace over them, but it's so hard to break DRS around here. As soon as you get past them, they're just stuck with you.
Yeah, absolutely. But you did a good enough job holding off Hannah's your teammate, of course. And hey, it resulted in a win. And then in terms of the sprint, I keep forgetting where people finish.
It was 5th. It was a bit of a mess.
Yeah, the sprint seemed like you got off okay at the beginning, but there was major chaos seemingly everywhere else
doing
around
a Joker
you.
lap, basically. I was trying to use the outside of turn 1. I think Troy just came across and I was forced off, had to rejoin, and then I think unfortunately I just collided a bit with Riley at turn 4. So sorry to him for that.
Yeah,
But
and
then just spinning on my own a bit stupidly, really. I didn't really compensate the setup for the lack of fuel, and the track just had no grip. It's so easy to lose these cars.
yeah, and as you say, the low fuel obviously a thing to consider for the sprint races because it's only 10 laps instead of I believe it was 26 today, and that means you put in a lot less fuel. But the other thing I wanted to ask you as a driver as well is when you obviously you probably do practice and you work out sort of the fuel calculations and kind of roughly how much you'll need for the actual like main event. Do you ever consider potentially underfueling the car to try and like maybe save fuel during the race so that the first laps can be a little bit better and maybe save some fuel later on in the race so that you can make it to the end, or are you pretty like set on
I think
a fuel figure?
It's pretty set on the fuel. I don't think it would be quicker to do that. You're talking maybe a 10th on fuel load at the start, but then you'd lose that lifting and coasting towards the end. So I think it'll be interesting if someone tried it, but I'm not going to be the first to try it.
Well, hey, maybe I could be a pioneer and there's like a new strategy involved. But of course, yeah, as you say, you might gain a little bit earlier on, but it's fuel, lifting and coasting, fuel saving later on, maybe a little bit harder. But in terms of not next week, but the week after, we go to Spa, and as a circuit, how do you feel about Spa? What's your opinion?
It's quick. That's what I think about Spa. Very quick. I think it'll be interesting to see whether it's going to be medium downforce or high downforce in the race. I think high is probably nicer to drive, but medium is so much more easy to race with, especially down the Kemmel.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fun. Riley and Oyvind are just so quick. Hopefully, it can edge towards them a little bit, but it is, they're just insane.
They were talking about as well getting voodoo dolls for each other to try and like curse each other so that they can battle. Maybe that's something you should invest in.
I hope they take each other out.
Yeah. I was gonna say maybe you should invest one as well with both of them, so that way they've got even more cursing happening. But hey,
Yep.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's one of those things that you guys, I'm sure, for the Intense Sim Racing team, are trying your hardest to battle with the Racing Lab guys, and maybe we'll see it happen. You guys are still quick in your own right. You definitely put up a fight. You put on a show, and if it's not their day, if it's not Riley's day, if he's feeling off, if Oyvind's feeling off, who knows what can happen between you guys. Obviously, that's sort of the hope is that you guys can be up there near the top. But a third place is still a third place, and taking home a fifth as well in the feature or the sprint is also good as well for your point totals. I'm not sure where that will put you yet. I haven't quite done the mental math on that. I'm sure that will be posted later somewhere.
Yeah.
But the other question as well I had for you, because I'm trying to figure this out myself, is obviously in 10 there's two teams, right? You've got the Intense Sim Racing team and the Intended Flat Out Sim Racing team. Who drives for who?
So it's me and Rolly for Intend, and then Hans and Gianluca for Intend flat out. I think they Rowley and Hans had some livery issues today, so it was a bit more confusing for you in the com box. But
because it looked like Rowley and Hannes were part of the same team, and then Gianluca and you were part of the other one.
No, there were similar liveries between the two teams.
Okay.
Sorry to you, but
no, that's why I have the lovely overlays that tell me which team is, who's driving for who. But yeah, cool. So it's nice to finally get the answer to that one. I did have a look and just double checked in the roster section of our wonderful website, not ifl.com, iFormulaLeague.com. If you want to get involved with all of the action you've seen today, go there. But Ben, congratulations again, as always, for the 3rd place in the sprint. In the main, and your 5th place in the sprint. Hopefully next time out goes a little bit better in the sprint, and hopefully you can bring home a 3rd, maybe even better in the main event as well. But before we let you go, anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Just the team, really. I've had a pretty rocky start to the season at Imola and Catalunya, but happy to bring back a podium this time. I think I'm going to ask Rowley for the lottery numbers, because his start in the sprint was just insane. I think I looked on the relative at the end of lap 1, and he was like 5 seconds up on anyone else.
Yeah, he definitely seemed to get an absolute mega launch and sort of just ran away with it in the sprint. But he's saying that it's skill in the chat. So there you go.
Maybe he had voodoos on all of us.
Hey, all I'm saying is that voodoo idea, I mean, it worked for Oyvind in the sprint because Riley didn't have a great race. So maybe there's something to it. That's all I'm saying. Just invest in some voodoos. Voodoo the people who you need to voodoo, and we'll see what happens. But that's probably just going to end up...
that's negative karma.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure it will come back on Oyvind at some point. But yes, mate, we'll let you head off, and I'm sure you need to, like the rest of us, get dinner and all the rest of it, if you haven't already had it.
Get out. It's tough work.
Yeah, it is. The sim racing world. Look, people don't give you guys enough credit, especially if you drive with like direct drive wheels and all the rest of it as well. It could be pretty tough, especially in the sprint. It's quite fast, quite frantic. But yes, mate, we'll let you head off. And again, congratulations for the 3rd place and then the 5th in our sprint. And we'll see you again.
I'm talking to you again at Spa.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the hope. But cheers,
maybe
mate.
first in. Let's hope.
Yeah, well, that's the hope. Yes, cheers, mate. Right. See you later. And of course, that'll be it from us. Unfortunately, not much time left, really, to talk through anyone else. But as always, that wraps it up here for the iFormula League, round number 3 from Silverstone. It was a feature race that was relatively predictable, you would have to say, but one that certainly had its upsides, had its downsides, had its fair share of drama, followed off by the sprint that I don't think anyone could have predicted, if we're being completely honest, with Riley Jacob having some unfortunate incidents. Thanks to the voodoo of Oyvind, it's going to be the talking point moving forward for sure. But once again, if you did enjoy what you see, feel free to follow along with us. Feel free to join us as well. Follow the iFormulaLeague.com website because you can find all of the information there. You can join us, get racing with us, and we will see you out in 2 weeks for Spa-Francorchamps. Again, thank you all for watching. Goodbye.